Meanwhile, today marks the 1 month mark since Hamas launched that terrorist attack on Israel on October 7th. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken wrapping up his high-stakes trip to the Middle East after making a surprise visit to the West Bank and Iraq in an effort to negotiate a humanitarian pause, is what he's calling it, ceasefire. Meanwhile, a Senate source familiar with the situation confirms to Fox that the Biden administration plans to transfer $320 million in precision bombs to Israel as the Israeli Defense Group is pushing deeper into Gaza. Joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst. He is chairman of the Institute for the Study of War and retired Army General Jack Keane. General, good to see you. Thank you very much for being here. I want to get your reaction to this $320 million haul the U.S. is going to be sending to Israel. Is that the right look from your standpoint?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Listen, whatever the Israelis need, if we have it, we're going to give it to them. And certainly their bombing campaign is an issue here for them. They're running short. And also they need interceptors because Hamas is still firing rockets and missiles into Israel on a regular basis, certainly not with the intensity that it had at the beginning of this campaign. But nonetheless, whatever the Israelis need, we're going to get it to them as soon as we possibly can, and that's absolutely the right policy.
Well, I want to get your take on these attacks on U.S. troops, because the Pentagon has reported that we've seen at least 38 attacks on U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq. At least 46 service members may have Iran-linked injuries. That's double what was previously reported, General. A new article in the Journal says escalating militia attacks on U.S. troops risk Washington-Tehran confrontation. I want to get your take on that. This is something that we haven't dealt with in a little while. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says that the U.S. will respond to attacks on U.S. troops. Watch this.
We're not looking for conflict with Iran. We've made that very clear. But we'll do what's necessary to protect our personnel, be they military or civilian. Prime Minister al-Sudani has made very clear his condemnation of attacks against directed at our people, threats at our people, and his determination to do what's necessary to make sure that doesn't happen.
So what's necessary? What should be the response from the United States to all of these attacks on U.S. bases?
Well, a couple of things so our audience understands. I mean, since October the 7th, it's clear that Iran has asked its proxies in Iraq and Syria, both working for the Iranian regime now, working for the IRGC, is who we're talking about here. They've ordered an increase in those attacks against U.S. bases, about 13 of them in Iraq and in Syria. And obviously now we know we've got an increase in casualties as a result of it. We tried to deter them from doing that with rhetoric, did not work. And then we conducted an attack ourselves at a weapons storage facilities on the border of Syria. We said on Fox that that's not going to work. That's not effective. That does not get their attention. The attacks not only continued, but they have accelerated. This is a misguided policy, I believe, we have here. We've got to face up to the reality that Iran is expanding the war by conducting these attacks against U.S. bases. And to say that this is separate from what took place in Israel also is fundamentally misguided. Iran is in charge here in terms of the proxy attacks against us and also dealing with Hamas's attack on Israel. I mean, in September, Hamas was training at the IRGC training center. So we've got to recognize that these things are all together. Iran is behind it, and we've got to get their attention. I've said before, what we should do is take down the capability of the Iranian proxies to conduct these attacks. What am I talking about? We know where their command and control is. We know where their weapons are, their rockets, the missiles, the drones, and we know where their entire logistical infrastructure. Conduct multiple attacks, comprehensive on that, and take away this capability so they cannot continue. And if that doesn't stop, if they continue to do it, then take down the IRGC, which is directing these attacks. And I would tell the Iranians, here's what's on the table. We're going to take down your training center where you train the Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria, and also where you've trained Hamas and Hezbollah. and make certain that they understand that IRGC training center bases, Ronald Reagan hit the IRGC bases in the 80s when the Iranians were interfering with the flow of oil out of the Gulf. And guess what happened?
Yeah.
It stopped. And that's the reality of it. Iran doesn't understand anything but level of force that's applied against them. And I still think it can be measured. I don't think you do anything to go after the Iranian people. You go after the IRGC chain of command and support system that is directing these proxies to attack U.S. troops.
So it just gets us into a broader and more expansive war. I mean, is this the kind of thing that launches America into this war if we start going head-to-head against Iran? And then when you think about Iran, you start thinking about who's supporting Iran. What about China? Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and the Chinese vice premier are going to hold two-day talks on Thursday and Friday, as you know. It comes ahead of next week's APEC summit in San Francisco, where President Biden and Xi Jinping are going to meet on the sidelines. I spoke with the former Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Admiral Mullen on Sunday over the weekend, and here's what he said he wants to see in terms of that Biden-Xi meeting. He says he wants them to come out and say publicly, we will not go to war over Taiwan. Watch this.
The biggest danger on the planet, focused heavily on Taiwan, and focused in a way where Xi Jinping seems to be leaning heavily to do something in terms of making sure Taiwan becomes part of China, and the Taiwanese people are more and more independent, more and more independent-minded. They have a key election the beginning of next year, which will send a big signal as well. And the more and more they pull apart without leadership from the top, without leadership from Xi Jinping and from President Biden, to come together and say we're not going to go to war over Taiwan, and we'll figure out how to do that, it's just going to get more and more dangerous.
General, he thinks it's dangerous that the U.S. and China seem to be decoupling, or as he puts it, coming apart. So, you know, he says it's catastrophic, by the way. What are your expectations for these meetings? What's your take on the Iranian aggression launching the U.S. into this war, and your expectations for China here?
Yeah, let me go back to something you said, Maria, because I can't walk past it. I mean, you threw a lot in this commentary here for me to deal with. But when you talk about dealing with Iran, that's an expansion of the war. And do we really want to do that? Well, that fear that you just expressed, that we're not going to do anything against Iran because we're going to be involved in a war with Iran, the evidence doesn't support that. But it's that very fear that you just expressed that holds back the Biden administration. They get paralyzed by the fear of adverse consequence and escalation. That is the leverage our adversaries are always holding over us. The fear of escalation. By your action, you will widen the war. Where I'm trying to tell you, by that kind of action, measured action, will stop the escalation. Much as Trump did when he killed Qasem Soleimani, it stopped the escalation. As to Admiral Mullen and what you're talking about with China, I disagree with that. The fact of the matter is, President Xi, over a matter of years, and right now in the last 2 years, his aggression in terms of intimidation and coercion of the United States military assets in the regions, of Taiwan's sovereignty on a regular basis, absolutely massive penetration of their air interdiction zone and maritime zones, the harassment of all of our allies and partners in the region. He has stepped up all of this activity. And he has told his military to be ready to fight a war at 2027. The only thing I think that makes any sense with President Xi is not rhetoric. We have tried diplomatic appeasement with Iran, hasn't worked. We're trying it with President Xi, it doesn't work. What we need to do is fix the military erosion of our capability in the region and make certain that President Xi, when he looks at it and his generals look at it, that we're going to impose cost in the event that he is going to do anything with Taiwan. That, more than any rhetoric, is critical to what we're talking about here. We have lost our capability to deter. We didn't deter Putin in Ukraine. We haven't deterred Iran in the Middle East, and they started a war with Israel.
Yeah.
And we've got to deter President Xi. And diplomacy, should they talk? Of course they should. Should we put our cards on the table? And I'd lay it right out in front of them. You know, President Xi, here's what you're doing. What do you expect us to do about this level of increased activity? Why are you penetrating the United States comprehensively every single day with the most significant penetration of our society in our history? Put those cards on the table and make certain he understands that we're not going to stand for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, General. And I was struck by Mullen's catastrophic wording that, you know, we got to keep this thing together. What are we supposed to do with all of this consistent aggression from China, communist China, over these last several years? Something's got to be done in terms of deterrence to pushing back to let Xi Jinping question, I better not do this.
No, I totally agree, and he's got to see that. We've got to recognize that our capability to deter has eroded. The administration has done good work in allies and partners and bringing them together and strengthening what the previous administration does. President Xi has noticed that, for sure. Yeah. But the other thing, as I've talked about here for a number of years, is our military capability in the region has eroded. We've got to fix it. And we've got to put real military capability into Taiwan. So when they look across that 100-mile strait in Taiwan, they also see there that that is going to cost them something if they try to take action. Those are the things that matter and will impact President Xi's behavior. And yes, we should talk to him, but let's put the cards on the table when we talk to him and let him know why we're so concerned.
Yeah, great analysis. And you certainly have been raising the alarm on this for many, many years. I know that. General, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.